Okay. So this is from a book called The Rich Man's Burden. I will give you the reference. Look at this one. The developed world has spent 2.3 trillion foreign aid over the past 5 decades, which is purely grants and philanthropies, and have still not managed to reach 12 cents worth of medicine to children that could have prevented half of all malaria deaths. So, to save a child from malaria, all you need is a 12-cent vaccine. Okay? What this gentleman says is that we have not been able to do that job very well. I'm sure some part of it has been done very well. Preventing 5 million child deaths over the next 10 years would cost just $3 for each new mother, which is, on an average, we're talking about $15 million. $3 is very little price to pay for the life of a child, but it doesn't seem to be happening as well as it would like it to happen. The point being made here is there is no dearth of money, by the way. Right? So trillions of dollars are out there, but it's still not being effective enough. Compare this with this one. Okay, on a single day on July 16th, the US and British economies delivered 9 million copies of the 6th edition of Harry Potter books to eager fans. Now tell me, am I comparing two, right? I mean, are these two comparable by any stretch of imagination? She vehemently nods her head. Why do you think they're not comparable?
Well, guessing that the kids who got books live in more accessible areas.
Absolutely. Sure.
That's the biggest.
So you're saying that areas are more accessible.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah, that might be one big difference.
Also, you don't really need someone to like apply a book to someone, whereas like to give someone a vaccine, you need some level of education.
No, tell me again.
Like to give someone a vaccine, you need someone to like actually physically do it and like know how to do it. Whereas with a book, you can just give them a book.
Oh, so this is just a medicine. So you're saying there might be dearth of people who will actually administer the vaccine, whereas in books, it's kind of just you give it to them. Yeah.
It takes money to go out and deliver 9 million copies of a book
Yes.
to all these people. That money could be applied to giving out that medicine to all of these new
Yeah, but money is not a problem even here. Even without this, there is enough money. You see this figure? $1 trillion of aid. Money is not a problem. Yes?
As far as I know about foreign aid, there's a lot of money that comes in, but not all of it goes to the people because a lot of it's spent on administrative costs.
Sure.
For organizations.
Which is true. Which is even true here in Harry Potter. If you are a publisher, you will spend a lot of money in administration. Right? So that's not so different. Yes?
I think the kids go to seek out the Harry Potter books to like, they're like, Mom, take me to the store. It's like,
So you're saying that has more pull. Harry Potter has more pull than.
I don't know that much, but I think like.
Who has greater incentive to reach the point? You know, is it a mother who has this child who demands Harry Potter, or is it a mother who has a baby and she knows that without this medicine the baby is going to die? Who has more incentive? Interesting, right? We don't know. Maybe both of them have equally hard incentives, depending on, right? But what I'm again trying to tell here is money is not a problem. Neither is incentive. There is a strong incentive to reach that place. Right? What would motivate you more? Sell Harry Potter book or deliver medicine to a child knowing that if I deliver the medicine, the child will survive. If I don't, the child will die. What will motivate you more? Hopefully the second one, the child, saving the child. So motivation is not a problem either way. Motivation is not a problem of the producer or even the seeker. But still, Harry Potter works, malaria medicine does not work. Can anybody tell me whether these are at all comparable? Many of you said why they are not comparable. Can any of you tell me the important parameter on which they are actually comparable? Yeah?
I think maybe it's just an issue of like education and awareness. Like maybe people don't even know that the medicine is available.
Yeah, so you're again telling the difference. You are saying the level of education is high here, it is relatively low, so you probably the mother doesn't even know that such a medicine exists. That's again a difference, I completely agree with you. Any similarity, which is the reason why I put it up on the board by the way. Yeah?
Both seem to be large distribution problems.
Precisely, right? So that the more glorious term in a business school that you use is supply chain. As I explained to you, supply chain is more than distribution. I mean, it is distribution just is one element of supply chain. Both of them are complex supply chain problems. The medicine has to be got from an organization, a medical company, gone through different steps to go and take it to the needy, the one who needs that. Same with Harry Potter. Right? There is a book, there is a consumer, you are producing it, take it through the series of chains and reach it to the consumer. Both are complex supply chain problems. All the differences that you have pointed out are perfectly valid. But the point being made here is that human beings have figured out how to deal with a very complex supply chain when it comes to Harry Potter. It is also very difficult. Imagine your points of sales, so many varied points all over the world, it has to be done on the single day. That's the fun of it, isn't it? To go and get Harry Potter on the day it is released, because you want to be the first, one of the first who has read it. So you have to release it at multiple points on the same day. Not an easy task to do. But we have figured it out how to do it. It works very well. But when it comes to malaria, still struggling. Why does it happen? Why is it that we are struggling in the developmental sector, which is here, but in the commercial sector, we have done quite well. Yeah?
Well, last year I was trying to do some more on social problems on healthcare.
Okay.
And when we studied this, well, there's a big difference because with the Harry Potter book, you want to make profit out of this. But with the medicines, companies are not interested in sending these medicines to developing countries because they don't make enough profit out of it.
So there is a financial incentive issue.
Yeah.
You are right. The financial incentive issue. There are of course information issues. Who knows? Who knows the stuff. The other thing that has been talked about also is that the whole development sector, the whole notion about donation and using that donation to pay to somebody, I mean help somebody, does not ever talk too much about efficiency. Does not ever talk too much about innovation. Well, they say, okay, this is a good job to be done and let us do it. People are motivated, they want to do all that stuff. But in the business world, because there is a sharp thing about how much money you make, people are always talking about efficiency, innovation, how to do things better, etc. etc. So there's one part which is very often driven by what we call the whole passion to do good to the world. Now doing good to the world is very, very important, but it is probably not coupled with how do I do it in terms of efficiency, etc. Right? Whereas here in the private sector, well, you don't know whether you are doing good to the world or not, but you are saying, well, I have to do it very efficiently. I have to apply my all management principles, etc., etc., to make this supply chain work. So that kind of is increasingly leading to a realization that you will probably have to employ some of the principles that we follow in the private sector to solve the problems of development sector. How many of you are likely to go and work for NGOs after your immediate education? Maybe. Yes, maybe. Mark her words. Huh? I won't be there to monitor, but you guys will be. Maybe half a hand, full hand. Okay, yeah. I hope you do, right? But again, the percentage will be relatively less. So all this talent, and I am told by Professor Ganguly that you are really a very talented lot, most of it will be deployed in the private sector. That's also a very important point. That the private sector, the commercial sector, the for-profit sector actually gets a lot of talent. And because it gets a lot of talent, it is much better suited to solve problems. The development sector gets some talent, but then probably it is not enough. Because remember the nature of problem, in our assessment, this is a far tougher problem to solve than the Harry Potter problem. So here is a development sector which has probably mankind's toughest set of problems to be solved, but you don't apply too much of management principles, you don't get a lot of talent there, you get a lot of good people there. They are very keen to do good things to the society, but probably not that much of talent, right? And so all these things put together, people started wondering, how do I marry these two? How do I motivate people from the commercial sector to start solving problems for the development sector and country? How do I employ what we typically call market-based principles to solve problems of the development sector? Yeah.
This is more of a common question, but I remember talking with friends about like non-profit organizations hiring like capable people.
Professionals, yes. Yeah. So there are all these things.
Right. So one of the problems we discussed is the fact that in order to attract those people, you need to pay them higher salaries.
Yes.
And a lot of nonprofits are publicly shamed for doing that. Like if you find out like, oh, this nonprofit spends like this much money on like the president, like people are like, oh, well, like, why aren't they spending that money helping people? But I feel like what a lot of people don't understand is that in order to have a well-managed nonprofit, you need to like invest in someone who can manage that.
Absolutely. Right. So non-profits always have these dilemmas.
Yeah.
Right. That how much can I pay? If I get a good person and he or she is demanding a high salary, should I pay that high salary? Or the fact that I am planning to work for a non-profit means that I will also not demand high salary. I am willing to, work for very low salaries. So these are a lot of challenges in the not-for-profit sector, whereas social enterprises or social entrepreneurship kinds of tells you that we will have for-profit companies which will be working with development aims as the fundamental aim of the company. The key difference that we will not maximize profitability. All the commercial enterprises would try to maximize profitability, whereas social enterprises, we will be like any other company, like a private company. In fact, today in the United States, they have a new category called the B corporation, the benefit corporation, where they're actually formalizing this. Saying here are a bunch of companies, B corporations, we don't have that in India, which are private companies, so which are not for profits. They are for profits, but their main purpose is actually helping the society, doing good to the society. Yeah.
Okay, so in the States, if you're going to make the transfer from a private company to a public company, that means that the public can buy a share of your stock. What would be the difference here in India? And even public companies.
Same. Actually, the way you describe it's the same in India. You have a private enterprise to public, which means public will buy your share. You can have it the other way around also. A public enterprise can also become a private enterprise.
And so you're saying that private companies, essentially what they seek is just profit, but they're going to differentiate them from public companies.
No. I didn't say that. See, private companies and public companies, both of them can be for profits. Both of them are for profits. Both of them can have commercial needs. Whoever are your shareholders, your main aim is to maximize returns to the shareholders, which effectively means you maximize profit. Whereas in social enterprises or in B Corp, you are saying I am not maximizing my profit. I will make profits, but I will maximize social impact. When does it matter? Where one eats into the other. So, would you spend money for educating a bunch of people, but that money you spend will eat away into your profit? A private company is unlikely to do that. Whereas a social enterprise or a B corporation will say, no, that's the reason why we are here. So we will spend money to educate maybe poor villagers, and as a result, we will not have so much of profitability. That's fine with us. Okay, so that's the fundamental nature. It's not about private and public. Okay, so what I will do now is we are going to show you some videos of different social enterprises in India. I have selected a few from some sectors or the other, and we will see that videos. But maybe before that, should we go for a break or shall I show them the first video? What do you suggest?
Show them the first video.
Show them the first video? Okay. So the first video is one of my probably most favorite companies called Selco. And I have sent you the case which I have written on Selco. That was part of Professor Ganguly's mail that was sent last night.
Then we will do that. Let's do it after.
After break?
Changing thing, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
So let's do it after.
We'll after the break? Okay, sure. So let's go for a break and come back. both poverty as well as environment, and you will see why. Because it caters to energy services. And the case study on Selco, Professor Ganguly has already sent you last night. So sometimes if you have time, I know you guys are perennially busy, but when you have time, you can just go through it.
Kara sent that a few days back, right?
Yeah. The Selco case study, a little while ago.
Yeah, that's okay.
So let's see whether we can make it work.
Is this thing on?
Is this thing on? No, it doesn't seem to be.
Manoj, is it, yeah,
Manoj,
getting on. Getting on?
Yeah. Okay. It should have started by now.
Maybe stop for 30 seconds because the video is essentially getting on projector.
I will go back.
Yeah. And is the sound working properly, Manoj?
Sound I just
Yeah, when we checked it worked.
just
Yeah, I think now the
Karnataka, southwest India, a land of temples, lush forests, but little electricity. With over 18,000 families lacking access to the grid, when the sun goes down, vast swathes of the region are shrouded in darkness. Solar energy has the potential to bring light to every home.
The people living in these areas are never going to have access to electricity. The only option for them to ever access power would be to use solar energy.
Set up 10 years ago, Selco Solar Energy is now working across the state, providing reliable and affordable energy to over 40,000 families. Selco's team of local technicians from Udupi are loading up a system to head off into the forest. Today they're making a round trip to the Belsangadi region to bring light into the lives of another family. When they arrive, the technicians get straight to work, opening up the roof and finding the best spot for the solar panel.
Whenever we bring a solar system to a new site, we first select where to mount the panel. There are several restrictions. It must be south-facing and shadow-free. Then we consult with the customer where to keep the battery and where to install the lights.
This installation will power 4 lights. The solar panels produce a 12-volt.
Second video, you should be able to pick up a few more things. Now, one of the things that you heard, I don't know whether you caught it, is that the cost of the system is $400 per system. Okay? Now, this $400 actually is the cost of a system which has 4 lights. Okay, so per light, it's kind of $100 per light. Now, what do you think if you were this company? What do you think would be the big challenge here? If you are selling something which costs $100, even if they buy a 1 light system or if they buy a 4 light system, anything as you were talking about $400, what would be the big challenge?
Convincing people that afford the money.
Yeah, affordability, right? We're talking of poor people here. You already saw the numbers. You know, they are earning $1 a day, $2 a day. How will they really get $100? Right? So buy the system. So even if it is very useful, they will not just have the money. So what they do is that's where the credit part of it comes into play. Okay. So the important thing to again keep in mind is that he is selling the lights to the poor. He is not giving it as a donation. That's a big difference here. Hence it's a social enterprise. Many of them will call it as a social business. Somebody might even say, why is it social business? He's just selling to people. Right? We can get into debate if at all. But the point is that how do you ensure that the poor can buy it even if they think that it is very useful for them? Obviously it is very useful for them because they don't have access to electricity. But how do you ensure that they buy it? That's where the provision of credit comes in. So there are two models that he follows, and these are explained in my case, but I'll just quickly run through them. One is, of course, go to the bank. Okay? Not so easy to convince the bank, but remember, this is an asset. I talked to you about collaterals. So the bank usually will lend if there is a collateral, because they know that if the fellow can't pay back the loan, I will go and grab that asset and go and sell it in the market. And that's how I will probably recover some part of the credit, okay? So one of the stuff is going and getting the loan from the bank. But even if you get the money to finance the stuff, how do you ensure that the person pays it back? Because he's after all a poor person. What is his way of paying back? Any idea? Yes?
Waiver?
To the bank? No, I mean bank will only take money. How does he ensure he has money to pay back? Because now he needs that extra money to pay back, right? I mean if he goes and borrows $100, it might mean $50 a day to pay back. How does he get that extra $50? Yeah?
Because whatever he bought is an investment, so it should be getting returns.
The productivity enhancement. Okay, so the assumption here is that this solar light will go and enhance your income, and that enhancement of income will come back and help you pay the mortgage. Now this is very critical to think of any business model in the domain of poverty. Wherever you are unable to create these linkages, it will be very difficult to make it as a private company, because then you have to again go into the donation model. Whereas here it is very simple. So I met this hotel owner. He runs a very small hotel in North Karnataka. Without light, sorry, not a hotel, a restaurant. Without light, he has no connection to electricity. So without electricity, his restaurant will run when sunlight is there. So his restaurant will run from say 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening. But with solar light, he increases that running time from 6 in the evening to 10 in the evening. Those 4 hours of extra income enables him to pay back the loan that he has taken to buy the solar light. So that is the innovation part that we are talking about here. That how do I, so even though the founder, you are going to see Harish very quickly, founder is an engineer. Since you are helping the poor, you are trying to sell to the poor, you have to think of all those linkages, how I can make it a financially viable business model. The other model, of course, so is to say that there are some vendors who were using kerosene. So I am a push cart vendor. I don't have any source of electricity or light. So I have a small kerosene lamp. Now he goes and figures it out that this person needs to buy 15 rupees worth of kerosene every day. So what he does is he goes and makes an arrangement with the bank so that his mortgage is such that he needs to pay back only 10 rupees per day. So again he goes and takes a loan, buys a solar light, but the bank comes in and gives him loan, and that loan, the way I pay back is 10 rupees a day, which is 300 rupees a month. It might take me 5 years to pay it back, but the bank is fine with that. Which means that because you have shifted from kerosene to solar, you are actually saving 5 rupees extra. So that becomes his incentive to switch over. He pays it back. It becomes his own after 3 or 4 years. The life of these are fairly long. And of course, he is polluting the environment a lot less. So there are different ways by which he is making the model viable. Okay, so that is point number 1. The finance part is very important. Because you have a technological product which is innovative, which can help the poor, but unless and until it is linked to the finance, it is not going to work out. The second is the service part. He also makes a comment. See, in India, government of India often will come up with this thing that, give out solar lamps free to the villagers, because they would have some source and they will say, villagers need electricity. We can't give them can't connect them to the grid, so let us give them solar lights. But the point is there was nobody to service them. So over a period of time, there was this perception that solar lights are great to have, but sooner or later they will break down, and then that's the end of it. So he has built a very extensive service network to make sure that people can be serviced. And imagine, for a poor person, this is a huge investment. In fact, this is the largest investment that poor person would have made in his or her life. And hence you need a service network to reach those people. I am running my restaurant based on the availability of the solar lights. If the light doesn't work, then my customers, I can't get my customers. And hence he has to make sure that his service or technicians goes there at a very short notice. Now again, he will tell you that there are remote locations, so we can't reach them so fast. I'm trying to build that network, but it is obviously expensive. Interestingly, his company doesn't have any salespeople. They have only service, whom they call engineers. But these service technicians are actually villagers who have just learned the job, learned it on the job. They were cycle repairmen, they were television repairmen, and he said it's easy. The technology is not very complex. They can actually fix if something breaks down. Okay, so that's how he has built up his company. So financing is important, servicing is important. There was one more term called self-help groups that was mentioned. You saw this group of women who are. Anybody knows what a self-help group is? It has been traditionally linked to microfinance. So it's an important concept. I thought I'll just explain that to you. Anybody knows the self-help group is? Self-help group, the group which helps itself. In the notion of, so it is again linked in the notion of finance. So this is, again, we did not have so much time for microfinance, but the genius of Muhammad Yunus was to find out, see, why are banks not lending to the poor? They are apprehensive that these fellows will not pay me back the money. And they also don't have collateral, so you don't know. And to do a credit analysis of potential borrowers is very expensive, especially if they are taking small amount of money from you. So it doesn't make sense for a bank. So Yunus scratched his head and figured out that how do I make this? How do I figure out who is worthy to be even lent these $100 or 200 rupees versus who are the ones who are not worthy? Because I can't afford to have people going and doing credit analysis of these potential borrowers. And there he hit with this concept of self-help groups. So what effectively it does is, it actually creates groups of maybe 5 or 7 poor people from the same neighborhood who all know each other. And it goes and tells them that, you know what, I will lend to one of you at a time. And I will only lend to the second person if the first person pays me back the loan. Now the group tell me whom I should lend to. So what effectively he does, he makes the group judge the credit worthiness of each other. It's a classic peer review. And who is likely to know whether I can pay back or not? My neighbor. Because my neighbor knows my financial status, my neighbor knows whether I have already taken a lot of loan from other money lender, my neighbor knows that, whether I get beaten up by my drunk husband every day, which means that even if I have the best of intentions, I might not be able to pay back. So he goes and says, you guys form the group, these groups of 7 or 8, I am willing to lend you the money, but you guys tell me whom I should lend to. Condition is, I will lend to the second person only when the first person pays back. This I think is a genius, stroke of genius. Because now what you have done, you have pushed the assessment of creditworthiness to the group itself. You are leveraging their knowledge about one another, something which we call social capital, to judge whom I should lend and whom I should not. So like that, lot of self-help groups are being formed everywhere. So that, that has become a nice, and today even the banks are now willing to lend to these self-help groups. Because the self-help groups gives you an alternate security compared to taking collaterals. Any guesses what is the payback rate of the poor when they typically take loans from microfinance companies or banks? What is the payback rates? What percentage of people do you think don't pay back among the poor? Much smaller, less than 5%. Depending upon what kind of institutions you are, the payback rates are 95 to 98%. If you're running a bank and a borrower has not paid you back, it is called a non-performing asset for the bank. So the banks are often judged by the percentage of what they call NPAs, non-performing assets. So microfinance institutes have the least NPAs that you can think of. The commercial banks have much larger NPAs. Okay, so the failure of the financial system is because the NPAs ballooned to such an extent that you couldn't run the system very well. So the rich people's tendency of paying back is far lower compared to the poor. That's one lesson which we have learned from the microfinance sector. Right? Obviously that enables now to do that. Okay, so I will stop there now. My point was that imagine the business model that has started working. So now you will, yeah.
Just one quick note, just by way of comparison, US banks, credit card owners, etc., mortgage lenders spend a huge amount of time, resources, and employ a whole lot of people, build a whole lot of tools to just assess credit worthiness, right, of people. And that's what you say here, that has been pushed down the social hierarchy.
To the community.
To the community. And this, in general, if you just think about it, this would be considered one of the hardest cases. How do you assess credit worthiness there? So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like this model only works because India is like much more like collectivistic as a culture and everything? Because I feel like my neighbors back home, like this sort of system would work in like the US in terms of like, I don't think my neighbors know if my parents like financial stability or not, or like, because people are much more private.
Yeah, so see, I have an apprehension. I always hesitate today to talk about India versus US versus Singapore. Okay, our society has become so stratified that I can't talk of one India now. My sense is that the community living is a lot more prevalent among the poor than among the rich. Okay, so you and me, who are economically much well off, we can afford to become more nuclear, more isolated, afford to be more conscious about private versus public. Whereas if you're talking of the poor, I don't think they have that ability to do that, right? So my sense is the poor in US, and obviously the poor in US are very different from the poor in India, will be much more collectivistic than the rich. Right? So I have seen, I was very surprised to see the level of poverty in places like Connecticut, which is, so these people are really poor, and that can be very easily compared to the poor in India.
There is one other point also. Where are you from, Rachel? I mean, I asked this before.
Indiana.
Indiana, yes. So I don't know much about Indiana. I haven't lived there, but for sure, if you're thinking about, let's say, Boston or New Hampshire versus Tennessee, both of those places where I've lived. In Tennessee, your neighbors usually would know a lot more about you and each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, yes, I mean, there is that. Even within the US, there are a lot of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have one more question.
Yes. You had a question?
Oh yeah. Well, it wasn't really a question. So I know that in the U.S. there's like websites that you can go and like finance small projects.
Yes, Kiva.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like how would that work if like a lot of these small like villages don't have any internet access?
Internet access is bothering many people here, just for context.
So let me try to understand your question. You are saying that Kiva, so what effectively Kiva does is Kiva allows you and me to become investors for a social enterprise.
Yeah.
Or for any enterprise, not a social enterprise. So there's a villager who wants to start a small company, he needs money. He is poor, he needs money. So Kiva gets the money from you and me and puts it out there.
Oh, okay. So
Invest is there.
Kiva goes out already to the villages and asks.
Yes. So actually there is usually another social enterprise in between.
Okay.
So Kiva, look at Kiva as an aggregator of funds from different sources. Okay. So they will take donations and they will take investments.
Okay.
And then will aggregate the fund and then give it to social enterprises like Selco so that they can go and help the poor. That's the model they are working. So Kiva needs internet access with the donors and the investors. But on the other end, demand side it is not so important. There's a very interesting company in Bangalore called Rangde, R-A-N-G-D-E. Okay, it's the same model as Kiva. In fact, Ram and Smita, husband-wife couple, very interesting. They want to copy Kiva in India, right? And again, you will notice that Kiva also is largely donation-based. So the Kiva's aim was to become not donation-based, investment-based, which means that if you give money to Kiva, they are going to give you back the money after a while. Okay, but today they still haven't reached that stage. Same with Rangde. So in Rangde, you can actually invest 100 rupees and they will give you 102 rupees at the end of the year, which means 2% rate of interest on the money that you have invested. And they will also show you where the money has been deployed. So that's the advantage of leveraging information technology to cut down some of the costs you would have otherwise incurred. Inspirational model, but well, it has a long way to go. Shall we go and meet Mr. Harish Hande, Dr. Harish Hande, who is the founder of Selco. More ways than one, he has been a big inspiration in my life. He was also from the same institute which me and Professor Ganguly has been are from. He is a little bit senior. He also lives in Boston, so you know we can always. Sometime maybe you'll run into him. He's a very innocuous person, a very interesting person to talk to. So let us see if we can get him. Open hyperlink. Okay, we'll leave with the advertisement for 17 seconds.
When up to 10 ordinary batteries aren't enough, just one Duracell does the job. Even in the most power-hungry toys, Duracell lasts longer, up to 10 times.
What happened?
Duracell stopped.
No, the worst is if you only play the advertisement and not the rest. Huh? I did not check this link before coming. I hope it's not there.
Oh, yes, some of the links. Some of the links I was not able to download. This was one of them.
Yeah, this is.
Harish Hande is a Magsaysay awardee and co-founder at Selco India, an organization that has been taking technology to India's poor for nearly 2 decades. Selco's work with solar technology, suitable financial and service models, and consistent efforts have dispelled myths that the poor make poor customers and that customizing technology is an expensive affair. Here's Harish Hande sharing insights.
I was doing my PhD in the US and I came down to do my field research in Sri Lanka and India, and said how do we look at sustainable energy and linkage to poverty alleviation. The concept was, how do you create a sustainable venture that destroys 3 myths? That the poor can't afford technologies, the poor can't maintain technologies, and you can't run a commercial venture while trying to meet social objectives. How do you create a venture that was bottom-up approach, where you look at poor not as beneficiaries but as clients, poor not as end users but as partners? I think that was the philosophy.
What was let's say one of the early projects that you worked on?
You define a project with a time frame.
Do you folks have any questions? Anything to clarify? Yes.
I guess one of the things I've sort of been thinking about from the trip and just some of the visits that have gone on is when you're helping the poor, understanding the reality of the poor seems like a complex sort of situation. So I guess what about Selco does that and like really understands the actual reality of what the poor are going through?
Yeah, so it's a very important question that you're raising. Most social entrepreneurs like Harish would tell you that understanding the context is most important to create something for the poor, right? So the solutions which you and me have, the technology, etc., it's very unlikely to help the poor out there. So you are right. Now Harish himself spent almost 5 to 6 years understanding the needs of these people. So the Karnataka, from where he is from, I mean, that state happens to be also his native state. So he knows the language. He traveled far and wide within the state for 6-7 years before he made the business model. I would also say that when I talked to him in 2000 versus when I talk to him now, I think his business model has changed a bit, and he's a lot more confident about what he's doing than he was. So what I'm trying to tell you is all these models also evolve over a period of time. People never figure out the right thing to do when they start. The challenge what becomes is replicating it in other places. So if you have done it well in Karnataka, because India is such a diverse country, can you go and do it even in Gujarat? In fact, they wanted to go and do it in Gujarat. And they realized that Gujarat actually doesn't have an electricity problem. Okay, while Gujarat has tons of poor people, there is a lot of electricity in Gujarat. They go and do it in Bihar, and they found out that what they call, there is a kerosene mafia there, that it is very difficult to break the stranglehold of the kerosene mafia and bring it. So obviously each of these local places have their complexity, and I think that's a very big challenge in the domain of social entrepreneurship, that scaling them becomes a huge challenge. So you see many of these models working very well within a relatively small space, relatively small geography, but taking it up at a national level becomes very, very challenging. Yeah, I don't think we have solved that. I mean, in some areas we have, in most areas we haven't.
Just one other point also, not about Selco, but many of you went to visit this farmland. And if you did not, you at least heard about that or saw the videos. Similar things about both scaling up and scaling down. So you talk about what happens if you had a farmland that's much larger in size, so you scale up. And what happens if you are talking about individual farmers who, each of whom have much smaller plots of land, can you scale down? And so this kind of thing persists across the board. Just another context in terms of some of our, the last couple of lectures that where we talked about, a little bit of pessimism, nothing can be done, what can be done, but well, these are the kind of things that really can be done. One thing though I'd say is, see, there are two extremes in terms of working with the poor. One extreme is, of course, treating the poor as completely as exploitable markets, which is one view. And it's not to say it's a wrong or right view, because that might sometimes work to everybody's benefit, I guess. The other is this thing about, helping the poor. And there is an issue there also. If you take too much of a view of, I am helping somebody, it's hard then to think of, something that you're doing as equal partners. Potentially there is something in between where you try to understand them, and it becomes something that's to everybody's benefit. So again, I was talking about this one example. Sometimes we meet in Boston as Boston Water. And some people from South America and elsewhere, they're asking me, why hasn't it happened in India?
Which one?
Yes, so in many parts of the world, the so-called educated and the so-called, powerful people with some leverage, they have actually gone out and tried to solve the water issue, just with one example. Because they have said that, well, it's to my benefit if poor people also have access to better water, because waterborne diseases can come to me as well. In India, it hasn't happened that way. And who knows why? Is it because there is, for some of these things, less of a feeling about, I either go out to help and here is what you get, here is the dole that you get, or I go out and try to do something, but, or there are also some fundamental issues in India, infrastructurally, socially, which are not exactly the same as South America, for example. But these are, these are interesting things that people struggle with. Anyway, just for context, go ahead with your questions.
Yes.
Well, I was kind of interested in the things that you were saying about the education system in India, and how people aren't really aware even of the problems, maybe, or the scale of the problems.
Yep.
Do you guys have any experience with that?
I would tend to agree with him. I mean, our education system, obviously people will have different views, but what he effectively is saying is that we are very structured in our approach to education, right? So we are probably not allowed to be too creative, at least in the earlier stages of our education system. And I mean, both of us have been through the same education system in India, and we would very much agree with that. But there are different stages of societal development also. I mean, the reason why we are so structured, the reason why most people in India would love to be engineers, because it guarantees you some kind of financial security. I mean, I know of my parents and his parents, I mean, economic conditions are more or less the same. We were probably what we would call lower middle class when we started off. And our parents wanted us to be engineers, not really because they thought we loved engineering, but simply because that guarantees us job and security in life, which is something which probably both of our fathers would have struggled with something in their lives and some part of their lives. Now when we become parents, I think it will change, because obviously our economic conditions have changed, and we might think that the next generation can take more risks and they can be more creative. But if me or he had gone to the parent and said that, I want to be a filmmaker.
Historian, that was my thing.
Historian, right? I want to be a historian, filmmaker, and all. Parents would say, yeah, that's all great, but first finish your engineering. After that, you do whatever you want to do in life. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't agree with that.
So see, the baseline is very, very low. I mean, it's easy to blame the parent in this case, right? But you have to realize that the baseline is really low, right? If you fall way lower than you can even think about in the US, right? For example, and you're seeing some of that. Now, purely in terms of education, if I think about, okay, I went to IIT, I mean, both of us did for my undergrad, and for my PhD, I went to MIT. I don't think it was a big deal, right, in terms of the education system, because it was a huge change. It was actually less stress, I think, relatively speaking. But that was not the point. The point was something different. Last time we went to the Indian Institute of Science. This time some of the students came and visited us because the professor was busy interviewing PhD candidates. They are a graduate-only institute, right, for science and technology. There was an interesting question that came up last time, which I was probably telling you with Pradeep Mujumdar. So somebody asked, you are solving the world's problems, and okay, why don't you also look at local problems? So at Northeastern, if you go and say, okay, we want to develop case studies in Boston, case studies based on Boston, or even if you were to go to MIT and Harvard and say we want to develop case studies in Boston, they'd say great, right? There would be a thing about, for research also solve something that gives you world visibility, but if you also have a case study in Boston, great, no issues. But here there is that little bit of disconnect. So his first response was, wait, local problems, yes, but that sometimes stops you from doing high-end science. Now, on the face of it, when you think about these things, it looks stupid, right, with due respect to everything. I mean, why wouldn't you want to solve local problems, scale up and learn from there? On the other hand, it's not as stupid. I mean, this is a fairly respected, researcher, educationist. He had a point, which maybe at that point he was not able to express that well. But the point is, see, I mean, think about something like remote sensing. Right? Think about something like, India sending this mission to Mars. Yes, at very low cost. Are all of these wasted? Given all the other things that are there that you're seeing now, should India just not do any of this? Right? Well, it depends. The issue is remote sensing helps significantly in hazard resilience, right? Early warning systems. Mission to Mars helps. Now, where this balance is, I wouldn't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't say that I have an answer. He and I would probably disagree vehemently on where this balance is, right? And we do disagree on many different things. But where we would agree is these are very hard decisions to make, right? So there is this thing about, if you just look at this education system, IITs teach you this, MITs teach you this. Yes, other than this societal thing, baseline is low and all that. But overall, and I'm just mentioning MIT because the IITs were modeled after that, or at least IIT, Kharagpur, the oldest IIT was. So that is not where the difference is. Where the challenge is that the problems that you then want to go out and solve, or you'd rather have your students solve, they are not the same kind of problem. So how, I mean, is there a way to learn? Just one quick example and then I'll stop. So there is this field called agricultural engineering at IIT Kharagpur, okay, which we'll go and visit, by the way, that IIT. There is a way to, because the government of India would want to encourage agricultural engineers, then becoming agricultural managers, that whole thing. They used to have, I don't know if they still have, they used to have a quota in the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad, okay, which is one of the top three. I mean, the Indian Institute of Management at Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, these are the top three.
It is the top, I would reluctantly
admit. Okay, so it is the top. Very small difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and they have a quota for them just to encourage that. So agricultural engineers with some quota, they still have to go through all the exams, but you know, they have some sort of quota. I mean, they don't have to maybe do as well, they can still get into in an institute of management. The idea is to produce these engineers who are agricultural engineers, agricultural managers. What do you think most of them end up doing? Maybe things like investment banking.
Yeah,
right?
bank managers.
Bank managers and things.
Unilever, selling soaps.
Selling soap.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, I love the soap. But the thing is, there is a disparity here. That's probably the crux of what's happening with education. Some sort of, how do you motivate that? How do you do that? And think about, don't think about, you know, typical US student who come from, yes, certain background, but come with, I mean, there you don't have to think about the baseline, right? Okay, what can happen? I'll go there and then I'll do something else. Here, that baseline is very.
Okay, so I thought that, oh, you have a question?
Thurston?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I like the idea of how the community members are sort of responsible for each other, and also how the local technicians sort of double as sort of the salesman.
Yes, yeah.
I was going to ask if you've seen that happen in any other industries or any other models that have come before. Is that a new idea, or is that something that's an old idea that is now being exploited? Because it seems like that's not really that common.
The first one that you said, that the group acting as, you know, that is very widespread now. The microfinance model, though it has the self-help group model, it has different varieties, but that is very much something that is doable. The second one is very unique to Selco. Right? I mean, for his whole philosophy that I will not have any salespeople and my service people will actually act as salespeople is something which is very unique. So as I understood Harish more and his company more, I think some of the unique stuff which we see are simply because his whole notion that profitability is not the key criteria. In fact, he never talks of profitability. He says, I have to just be financially sustainable, which means break even. You know, my revenue should be just good enough to cover my cost. But my whole purpose is to actually, you know, sell as many solar lights as possible. It's very interesting. You know, he will not sell the light to me. Right? If I go and tell Harish, can I have a solar light? He says, no, you don't deserve it. Right? Because you are living in Bangalore, you have connections and all, that's not for you. So, you know, nobody else could do that. Because imagine, he could have easily sold the light to me. Right? I mean, his sales effort to sell the light and I will pay him the same price would have been much lesser. But he said, no, I will have to do it. So he actually makes sure that he sells to people who are even poorer. Right? So he will say that if somebody is buying my light without asking for credit, he or she is not a deserving candidate. I will not sell it to them. Philosophically very different. Whereas if I was running a commercial enterprise, if I was an entrepreneur, I would love to sell to people who would not take credits because obviously your sales cycle is much shorter, which means your profitability would be higher. So those are some of the stuff which is very unique. But if you look at social enterprises, most of them will have some of these uniqueness or other which will really make you very happy to know about them. But you worry that can it be replicated in other models? I mean, that's the quirkiness of the whole. Yes.
About the self-help groups, I was wondering are there any cases of violence with them? Because I'm thinking you're in a small group, there's a lot of pressure on individuals to get payments in on time so other people can reap benefits.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, other cases, and if it grows and develops and this model gets replicated elsewhere, do you think that could be a problem in the future?
Yeah, there are problems with self-help groups also have been identified, that intense social pressure can actually drive you even to extreme cases like suicide, right? Because it is very important for these people how they are viewed by the community. And that's a very strong currency to stay with. So yes, there are examples of that. Isolated, not very strong. I mean, not, I would say, endemic, but yes, that's always a chance that you are driven so much by, or you are shunned by your neighbors, right? Or it might happen that you just could not pay despite your best of intentions, and your neighbor is very unhappy about it. So they will kind of put pressure on you, maybe sell off your utensils and clothes and stuff like that, because unless you do that, I can't take the loan. So today, what many of the other models are doing is they are using the information, but they are not putting that condition that unless I pay back, he doesn't get the loan. So they are kind of doing a slightly modified version of that. But you are right. I mean, there are downsides for many of these models. Good observation. Shall we? Okay. So I now move on to show you a very interesting model in healthcare. I again picked up that when you were making your presentations, there were some views about healthcare system, etc. So I will show you a snippet from this hospital in Bangalore called Narayan Hridayalaya. It just means, what does it mean? God's abode of the heart, something like that. It's founded by Dr. Devi Sethi. You will see him on the video. And so look at it, and then I will again talk about the business model there. Right? Here we are selling solar lamps to the poor. There we are offering a service to the poor. Conceptually, not very different. You are offering stuff which the poor need to buy. Now we ask ourselves the question, again the same thing. How do I solve the affordability problem? That's the primary one, right? How is the affordability problem? Now imagine this one. Here, you have solved the affordability problem by having a direct link to the income stream. So you're saying that, what, I am reducing your cost, and as a result that could be used to pay for the system. In healthcare, the problem becomes tougher, right? Because your ability to link it to an income stream is very limited. Right? You can think of it that he or she will probably save a few days of work, etc., but very difficult. So how do you offer a service, a healthcare service to the poor, that too very expensive? Think of heart surgery. It is even very expensive for anybody in the world. 150,000 Indian rupees is the price of an average heart surgery, which will be what? Divided by 50, so 3,000 US dollars, 2,500, 3,000 US dollars. Dr. Sethi will tell you that only about 9% or 8% of the people in the world can actually afford to have heart surgeries. Okay?
How many of you are in the healthcare sector? Any idea how much an average heart surgery will cost in the US? Or maybe Nick? I know you have an answer, UT Dallas.
Like 30,000.
Okay. Yeah, it's very expensive.
105.
How much?
106,000. I'm steady.
Holy, yeah. So how do you do that for the poor, right? I mean, here we are talking of real stuff. So how does he do it? Look at the video. Hopefully he will give the answer, and then we can discuss a little. Manoj. Again, it takes startup time.